Well, hello everybody today. This is Mr. Elliott coming to you live from the studio in my house, not in the kitchen where I usually record things. I've got some sick kids today, which is super sad, but I hope that you understand. The quiz is still tomorrow. Mrs. Johnson will be running the study session today during fifth period. Today's lesson on John Adams will be on the quiz. The questions on the quiz are going to focus on Adams's strengthening of the federal government in some key ways and on the way he dealt with some foreign threats in some very key and often clever ways. Social Justice Club, and you'll need to find a space to meet after school today. If you're planning to take the quiz after school today, Mrs. Johnson has the quizzes. Please see her in room 111 after school today, and she will give you the quiz. From time to time, I'll check in with Schoology today, so if you have a question that I just didn't answer, please send me a message, and I'll do my best to answer it as soon as I can. So, in the background there is one of my children who I'm watching today. So, yesterday you learned about Hamilton and Jefferson and their huge fight which created the first political parties, the echoes of which we still have today. I think people did a really good job yesterday on the Matrix, and I hope your sensory figures look great. I can't wait to see them. Please make sure that you have turned them in to the black turn-in tray at the front of the room so that I can collect those and give you the grade that you've earned. So I thought we'd start off with a little bit of a review of Hamilton and Jefferson. And since I'm not there, just do your best to make this visual for the substitute. If your answer is Alexander Hamilton, hold up one finger. And if your answer is Thomas Jefferson, hold up two fingers. So Hamilton is one, Jefferson is two. Okay. All right. This picture here on the screen. Okay, that picture right there on the screen. Does that represent Alexander Hamilton or Thomas Jefferson? Hold those fingers up real high. Well, you should be holding up two fingers right now because that's Thomas Jefferson. He believed in small farms being the backbone of the future of America. That was all Jefferson. He's a big dreamer about the farms. What about this picture right here? Does this represent Hamilton or Jefferson? Okay, you should be holding up one finger because that Alexander Hamilton was the gentleman whose idea it was to have the Bank of the United States. Big banks like that are the backbone of the American economy. And so one finger for Hamilton is right. What about this quote here? The government is best which governs the least because the people discipline themselves. Small government is best so people can discipline themselves. Does that sound like something that Alexander Hamilton would say or Thomas Jefferson would say? You should be holding up two fingers right now because Thomas Jefferson believed in small government so that people could have maximum individual freedom. Oh, that doesn't work at all. No, never mind. We're going to skip that because honestly, I don't have the time with sick kids. Okay, well, you can see what that is in the background there. That's a Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. Big city at night. You can see that there's a lot of activity and hustle and bustle there. Does that city with the hustle and bustle represent Alexander Hamilton or Thomas Jefferson? And you should be saying one finger for Alexander Hamilton because Alexander Hamilton believed that cities were going to be the hubs of the American economy in the future. Turns out he was right. All right, a little bit of Hamilton and Jefferson review. There are going to be lots of questions about Hamilton and Jefferson on the quiz tomorrow. Best way to study for that is to go over your matrix. That is a fantastic study guide for you. To look at your study guide questions, the vocabulary, and the study guide helpers. There's some questions in there that kind of help you zero in on what's important about the rivalry between the two men. So I thought we'd move on then. And learn about John Adams. Okay, so John Adams is the man who becomes president after George Washington. And I may need to skip some of these. There we go. John Adams. All right. So sorry about my coughing there. It's just really early in the morning. John Adams, as you can see, looks very different from George Washington. He's bald, he's short, he's not at all a commanding presence. John Adams is a likable character. I like him a lot myself, but he had a really troubled term. And part of the reason why he had a troubled term was that John Adams has to deal with Washington's choice of neutrality, which I maintain was the correct choice. There's not a whole lot else that America could have done at that point, but that doesn't mean that John Adams is off the hook for that, because each political party, as you know, wanted to go to war. John Adams is now stuck having to maintain this course of neutrality, which nobody wants to do. And since people would not have gone after George Washington and said that he had made the wrong choice. I mean, he was the commander-in-chief during the American Revolution. So George Washington's a little bit protected from some of those political attacks. John Adams, however, is not George Washington. And people absolutely destroy the poor man for being neutral during this war. So he's only going to serve one troubled term, and then his own Federalist Party is going to abandon him and to support somebody else to run for president in the very next term. That has almost never happened. It's a terrible, terrible thing. He was kicked to the curb. Poor John Adams. 3 learning goals today. Don't forget that you need to be able to identify which leadership style John Adams has, and how do you know, what traits does he show. You'll need to be able to identify ways that John Adams established a stronger federal government, and identify ways that John Adams dealt with foreign threats to America's safety. Okay? All these things are going to apply. And before we get in really quick, I just want to say that the word administration is going to appear quite a few times today and on the quiz. Administration just means the president and his or her team. That's all it means. Okay? Administration means the president and his or her team. The school has an administration. It usually consists of the principal, the vice principal, and the people who are in charge, like other school officials. That's the administration. It's the team of people who are in charge of running something. Just an interesting picture here about the electoral vote in 1796 that got John Adams the vote. And you can see down below at the picture, he was running against Thomas Jefferson, the Democratic Republican Party. And as you can see, John Adams got the most votes. He got the majority of votes, 71 to Jefferson's 68. Now that's a close electoral college vote, but Adams still carries the day. Now we're going to look at some of John Adams's key biographic traits. Sorry, I'm having a hard time talking today. You're going to use this information to complete Part A of your Adams in Focus page. You'll need to write down maybe 6, 7, maybe 8 different things that you think are really important to helping you understand John Adams and what kind of a person he was. Okay? I'd say around 6 things. First thing to understand about John Adams is that he was not George Washington, which seems ridiculous to say, but nobody could have maybe been more unlike George Washington than John Adams. He was maybe the direct opposite, okay? Like Superman and Lex Luthor. Not to say that George Washington was a good guy and John Adams was a bad guy. I think that John Adams was great and I like him a lot. But John Adams was short, he was bald, he was not a military commander. He was often unkempt, like his clothes were sometimes rumpled. He was loud. He would fight with people. He was pushy, where Washington would ask for advice. John Adams hated to get advice. He was very bossy, and he would actually talk down to people who were in his presence, especially when he got upset and flustered. He would get frustrated, and it would come out in like inappropriate tones. Now, that being said, he was one of the key founding fathers, and his pushy behavior, historians say that's one of the reasons why the Declaration of Independence got written, because he was able to push the Continental Congress towards declaring independence from England, He was the one that chose Thomas Jefferson to write the Declaration of Independence. He was the one who pushed George Washington to be the commander-in-chief. Very, very forceful at getting his own way. He signed the Declaration. He was, after the war, the peace diplomat to England, which must have been extremely difficult for him to be able to swallow his frustrated, persona, this pride, this furious pride, and have to go to the King of England and work out some sort of an alliance, some sort of a deal. And after the war, he was vice president to George Washington and did a capable job there. It is worth mentioning that he had a very wonderful relationship with one person. That would be his wife, Abigail. In many ways, a better person than he was, and probably would have run for president herself if she was alive in 2016. She was an amazing woman, and is really the reason why he was able to, function. John Adams, something else about him I think is really worthwhile. It's not just that he was upset and frustrated and bossy. He was always trying to do the right thing. He was driven by personal values. I mean, the guy would get like really bent out of shape when he was certain that he was doing the right thing and other people were trying to stop him from doing the right thing. He would often talk about things in like moralistic terms, like what's good and what's bad. But to go about getting his way, he would bully people around. Something is interesting about John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. They had a twin star relationship their entire adult lives. They would go in and out of being friends. They were really good friends until Washington's cabinet, and then the Federalist and Democratic Republican split. They were the absolute worst enemies. Thomas Jefferson himself was responsible for saying the worst, terrible things about Adams behind his back and in newspapers and spreading rumors about him, saying, I'm just the worst things. When we get to the election of 1800, you're going to see exactly what kinds of things Jefferson wrote, but like short, bald, crippled, toothless, hermaphroditic. I mean, I can't fit them all into one like intro lesson, but TJ was pretty rough on him. Then they made up again after their political days were over. And what's funny is 50 days exactly to the day that the Declaration of Independence, when they were both very old men, they both died on the same day. What's even more interesting, so the 4th of July, right? The day that they themselves helped make famous. John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, the two most important members of the Continental Congress who wrote the Declaration of Independence, right? 50 days to the day after the Declaration was introduced to the world, they both died. What's extra cool is that their last words were both of each other. Were talking to the people in the room about the other person. So they had come around full circle, made up at the very end, and become friends. And I think that's a sweet story. What you're going to do now is watch 2 videos. The first video is just like the one yesterday from the History Channel. You're going to start it at 12 minutes and 30 seconds. It's about 8 minutes of John Adams. Use it to help you complete Part B. It's very, very good. It's very, very straightforward. It talks about the XYZ affair, which you're going to learn about. It talks about all these things that are on your key events page. So try to get as much of that done as you can. The XYZ affair is tricky, and so I've added a second video after that one. This one's really weird. Somebody made a cartoon of the XYZ affair. It lasts about 3 minutes, but it's very, very good. It answers, I think, all the questions on your key events for the XYZ affair. Then I want you to complete the key events with a partner using a textbook. The section and the heading hints are right there on the page. When you finish, I won't be able to check you off, but you'll have about 10 minutes to work on this. And then I want you guys to start working on the primary source. I'd like the substitute to read the primary source out loud to you while you are completing Part C and analyzing the source. Okay? So I'm going to be around today on Schoology from time to time. I want you to send me a message if you have any. But good luck with the lesson, and I wish you guys all the best.